In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, I am Afia Mahmood from Bank Road campus, and this is the course of Semantics and Pragmatics for BS English students semester 6. The topic for our today's lecture is lexical relations. This is part 2 of the lecture. In our previous lecture, we had discussed these topics. We had discussed synonymy and hyponymy. In our today's lecture, we will talk about antonymy, homonymy, and polysemy. And in our part 3 of the lecture, we will talk about prototypes, metonymy, and collocations. Now, let's begin. So our first term or the first lexical relation for today is antonymy. Now most of you know that a traditional definition of antonymy is oppositeness of meaning. The oppositeness of meaning or something which is opposite. Now this definition is quite simple. It does not fulfill the requirements of semantic analysis. This definition is not adequate for us because the words may be opposite in meaning in different ways. They may not be merely opposite. They may have different types of oppositeness or different other ways of oppositeness. Some words may have no real opposites. Some words may have more than one opposite. So what are we going to do in such cases? So we say here that there are different types of antonyms. But we will discuss those different types of antonyms. But before we move on, you have this simple practice to do. This practice will give you an idea that in reality, we don't have real antonyms for some of the words. Some do not have any one word which we can give as a quick antonym or as a quick opposite of a particular predicate. Let's look at these examples. Try to do this. So what could be the possible opposite of hot? Obviously you will say quickly cold. For thick you will say thin. For buy you will say sell. For lend you will say borrow. For male you will say female. And for dead it will be alive. How about lunch? What would be its opposite? Should it be breakfast or should it be dinner? What should be the opposite? Or none of these? Then liquid. What is the opposite of liquid? Whether it's gas or is it solid or neither of these. So in some cases we actually find it hard to decide what actually could be the possible or the perfect antonym of a particular word. So we have 4 basic types of antonyms that we will discuss in this lecture, inshallah. Or these are also called semantic incompatibility because obviously they are semantically incompatible. They are incompatible in their meanings. The first type of antonyms that we have is binary antonyms. Binary antonyms, binary you know the meaning of binary, it means 2. Now predicates. So from our previous lecture you should now be clear that what predicates are. Predicates we are using for the particular senses of the word. So predicates which come in pairs and between them exhaust all the relevant possibilities. So the definition contains 2 parts. First, that they are coming in pairs. So such as in the previous practice, the example dead and alive, these come in the pair and between them exhaust means that there will be no other possibilities between them. For example, if I say hot or cold, if for example if you are drinking water and I ask you is it cold, you say no. So does it mean that it is hot? No, it certainly does not mean this. So it means that there are some possibilities between hot and cold, but there are no other possibilities between alive and dead. So if somebody is dead, I will not, so if somebody is dead, you cannot say that person is alive. So between them, either somebody is dead or alive. So Between them they will exhaust all other relevant possibilities. One such example, one other example of binary antonyms is the example of true and false. If one predicate is applicable, then the other one cannot be, and vice versa. So for example, in your exam, if you attempted one MCQs which was false, so it cannot be true where one is applicable, the other cannot be applicable, and vice versa. So, and same example or the same thing can be applied to dead and alive, where one is applicable, the other is not. So if a sentence is true, it cannot be false. If it is false, it cannot be true. Binary antonyms. Now we are looking at another possibility or another definition or another way to define binary antonyms. Another way to view this is to say that a predicate is a binary antonym of another predicate if it entails the negative of the other predicate. So we just said that binary antonyms will come in pairs, means there will be two members, only two members in the pair. And the one, so a predicate is a binary antonym of another predicate if it entails, so one member will entail the negative of the other member. How? Look at this example. If something is true, this entails or this means that it is not false. So if a sentence is true, we say that it is not false. It will entail the negative statement of the other predicate. If it is false, this entails it is not true. So true and false are two members of the same pair. One predicate is actually or entails the negative of the or the negative statement of the other predicate. Now here is a practice for you for the binary antonyms. Look at these and try to do this. You have 1 minute to, rather you just have 30 seconds to do this activity. I hope you would have done it because the exercise is quite easy. Now chalk. If we say chalk, the opposite to it is not simply cheese. There can be some other opposite as well. Now if we say same, obviously the opposite to it is different. If I ask you, do you both have same dress? You will say no, it means different. So it is a binary antonym. Yes. If I ask you what's the opposite of copper, you would probably have a number of options. It can be tin or it can be any other metal as well. So it is not a binary antonym. It is not giving you two options or it is not coming in pair. Dead and alive, we had already discussed this example. Married and unmarried, obviously these two are binary antonyms. How about this 6-1, love and hate? Are these binary antonyms or no? So these are also not binary antonyms, because in binary antonyms, in definition we said that they come in pairs and between them they exhaust all the possibilities. So look at love and hate. Do they exhaust between them all the possibilities? No. So if I don't love you, I don't hate you. So it means that there are some other possibilities between love and hate. These can be expression of like or dislike or indifference or maybe some other feelings. So these are not binary antonyms. Now we will move on. The type 2 of antonyms is converses. Now we have to be little vigilant while looking at it. If a predicate describes a relationship between two things or people, and some other predicate describes the same relationship when the two things or pairs or people are mentioned in the opposite order, then the two predicates are converses of each other. Now again, converses are the predicates which will come in pair. The thing is that when the two things or people are mentioned in the opposite order, they are going to show us the same relationship. The relationship will not be changed. Now look at the example. Parent and child are converses. So because X is the parent of Y, its one order describes the same situation or relationship as Y is the child of X or opposite order. So for example, if we say Sam is the father of Alan, or we say Alan is the father of Sam. So father or son and father and son, or parent and child actually are the converses of each other. They are the types of converses antonyms. Now move on. Now here again is a small activity for you which you have to do quickly. Again, you have 30 seconds to do it. Are the following pairs of expressions converses? Do it quickly. So if you are done, that's great. If not, let's discuss. Below and above, are these binary antonyms? Yes, they are. Are they converses to each other? Yes, they are converses. Now below and above are converses because now you can take an example. If for example you say the floor below the table, or you can alternatively you can say the table above the floor. So both can be used in the opposite order and will still show the same relationship. Now grandparent and grandchild, yes, they are like the example of the parent and child we just did. Now love and hate, now these are not binary, these are not converses for the same reason that we had discussed above. Now conceal and reveal, these are again not the converses. Now why these are not converses? Because in converses, as we said, that they describe the same relationship when they are mentioned in the opposite order. And when I say Ali concealed the truth or the truth was revealed by Ali, these two don't mean the same. So these are not converses of each other. Greater than and less than, yes, they are converses, and own and belong to, they are converses to each other. Now we will move on. Now the notion of converseness can be applied to examples in which three things or people are mentioned. The case of buy and sell is one such example. Now look at these examples. If John bought a car from Fred, is it the case that Fred sold a car to John? Yes, obviously it is the case. And plus you see that there are three things or people involved: John, Fred and a car. So we can say that buy and sell are converses. Are borrow and lend converses? Yes, again, because if you say John borrowed a car from Fred, it will mean that Fred lent a car to John. So lend and borrow are converses. Now are give and take converses? Now what's your point of view? Think for a moment and then I'll tell you answer. So the answer is no. Why not? Because let's take an example. If we say Ali takes mobile from Hassan, or Ali took mobile from Hassan. So if it does not mean that Hassan has given the mobile deliberately or intentionally or willingly. So it could be an unwilling giving, or it could be only snatching as well. Now let's look at the next one. Are come and go converses. Now again, not. Why come and go are not converses? Because if you go to a tree, it does not mean that tree came to you. So these cannot be used interchangeably, or these cannot be used in the reversed order. So when two antonyms can be used in the reversed order with the same relationship, still exhibiting the same relationship, then they are called converses, otherwise not. Now there is one important thing that we need to remember in binary antonymy and converses. The antonyms come in pairs between them, and between them they exhaust all the responsibilities. Sorry, this is incomplete. So between them they exhaust all other possibilities. Now the members of a pair of binary antonyms fully fulfill the area to which they can be applied. So for example, look at this example, how they fully fill the area to which they are applied. You might be familiar with this topic up till now, because this topic comes before the topic of lexical relation in your outline, semantic fields. If not, then we can have a brief definition or introduction of this concept here. In semantic fields, actually, there are some words which are related in concept. So look at it. Such areas can be thought of a miniature semantic systems. Such semantic systems are sometimes known as semantic fields. In male and female, you see that in this male and female, they are the two members of the sex system of English, or the gender system of English. There are no other possibilities. Or let's take the example of truth system. In truth system only there are two possibilities, true and false. So semantic systems or semantic fields will involve some of the words which actually complete that particular field. So they actually together complete the meaning of that particular field. Now there are a few other systems, a few other fields or semantic fields which can have 3 or 4 or any other any number of members. So they can have 3 or 4 or any open-ended number of members depending on the way in which the system is organized. So for this we are going to have an activity. Look at these. We will do this together. Look at it. What would you call the system of opposition to which the words spring and summer both belong to? So in a way, summer and spring, they both are opposite to each other. Now what would you call them? What would you call this system? So it will be a system of weather, as it was, as in, look at this, the previous slide again. Here we said that it was sex system, here we said it was truth system. So here we will say that it is weather system. We have now, how many members does this system have all together? So we can say it has 4 members, or in some cases 5 members. Then what would you call the system to which solid and gas belong? Now what is that system? A system of matter. So there are 3 states of matter: solid, gas and liquid. We will say that this system has 3 members. How many members does this system number 3 has? It has 3 members. Now can you think of an example of a 7-member system? Now a 7-member system, days of week. We can say weekdays. They are actually 7-member systems. So you see, we have some systems where there are only 2 members, so they are included in the binary antonyms. Now there are few systems which have more than 2 members, either 3 or 4 or maybe more, as we saw here 7. Now 4-member systems are quite common. How many can you think of? So in this particular at this particular point, you should pause the video and you should think of some 4-member systems. So you may have some such questions in the exams as well. So you should think of some 4-member systems. You should do all the activities that are given in the lectures attentively. These are good for your understanding. Now I will move on. Once you are done, you can also play your video again. Now, in the previous slides, we had been discussing a system which may have more than 2 members. So we were actually talking about this multiple incompatibility. Now it is no more binary incompatibility. Remember, in the first slide of antonym, we had said that antonyms are also called or are also known as semantic incompatibility. So the third type of antonymy belongs to the system of multiple incompatibility. These systems have in common, what do they have in common? Or you may also say that there is a restriction on these systems or on these semantic fields or semantic sets. All the terms in a given system are mutually incompatible. They are mutually, so one member will be incompatible to all other members. For example, if I say summer, so summer is opposite to spring, winter, fall and autumn. Similarly, fall is opposite to winter and autumn and spring. So all are mutually incompatible. And second condition is, together the members of a system cover all the relevant area. Let's take the example of weather system again. Together they are covering the whole relevant area. There are no other weathers except these 4 or 5, and there are no other weekdays except these 7. So together they cover the complete relevant area. Now there is some practice again. Look at this practice carefully. How many English color words are there? Can you think of some English color words? Take your time and think of some English color words. Rather, you should do this complete activity yourself. I am giving you 1 minute for doing this. So dear students, 1 minute has ended. Now you might have noticed while doing this particular activity that these words, the color terms, the plants and different metals, they do not have 3 members or they don't have 4 members. They have multiple numbers in their systems. So multiple members. So we can say that there are open-ended systems as well, where you can actually include any other new invention as well. For example, if any new plant type has been discovered recently, that would also come in this same category. So we can say that there are categories of antonyms which have open-ended systems, or which are called multiple incompatibility, and there are number of or infinite number of incompatible options for them. Now we will move on. Here we are going to discuss the fourth type of antonyms. This fourth type of antonyms is gradable antonyms. Gradable antonyms are when the two predicates are gradable antonyms if they are at opposite ends of a continuous scale of values. This scale varies according to the context of use. Now this scale is going to vary according to the context of use. How, we will get to know about it in the next slide, but remember that there is a scale of values. How there is a scale of values? Look at this example. Hot and cold. Now these two are not binary antonyms. Now hot and cold, these two, so we had discussed this in the initial slides as well, that if you are drinking water and I ask you, is that cold? And you say no, so it does not mean that it is hot. It obviously means that either it is lukewarm water or it is normal, its temperature is normal. So it is actually on a continuous scale of value. So we say that gradable antonyms are those where one pair is actually at one end of the scale and the other pair is actually at the second end of the scale. So one more thing we had said in the gradable antonyms, let's go back to the previous slide. One more thing, we had said that scale varies according to the context of use. Now look at this. Hot in one context, for example, oven temperatures in a recipe book, it may be different, and hot in another context it may be, so this hot in one context, in this hot it may be cold in this context. So for example, the temperatures of stars, so it can be different from context to context, but remember that it is gradable on a scale. Now there is a practice for you which you will be able to do quickly. So are the following pairs gradable antonyms? So take 30 seconds to complete it. Now let's discuss it. So tall and short, yes, these are gradable because you can measure the height. Long and short are also gradable. Clever and stupid, these are also gradable because you can grade it. Somebody is not altogether clever or not completely stupid. Top and bottom, these are not gradable. These are not gradable. We will also learn our test for gradability in the next slide, but for now we can just take the example that we cannot say how top it is, or how there is generally no scale for for top and bottom. If something is at the top, it means it is at the top. If something is at the bottom, it means it is at the bottom. Then love and hate, these are gradable, as we had already discussed that there are some other possibilities as well. There are some other possibilities like or dislike or indifference, and maybe some other emotions as well. So these are gradable. Now we will move on and see that there is a test for gradability. A good test for gradability is where we can see whether a word can combine with very or very much or how or how much. When the words can combine with these words, it means that they are gradable. This is just a test which we can try if we are facing confusion in deciding about any word. So for example, we can say how tall is he or how short is he. We can say, but we cannot say how top is that shelf, because top just means top, at the top of something. So it is generally not acceptable. So this is a good test for gradability. You can try it on some words or predicates if you find confusion. Now here is a practice again. You can apply this test to all these following words and decide whether these are gradable or not gradable. So you can say very near, very cheap. Definitely you can say very beautiful as well. Can you say very electrical? So no, you cannot say very electrical. And similarly, you cannot say very triangular. Something is triangular, so it's triangular. You cannot say it's less triangular, more. If it is less triangular, it means it is some other shape. So if it is, so you cannot say it is less electrical. If something is, if a machine is electrical, it is just electrical. So now we will move on. Now dear students, we are going to move on. Here you can see there is the overview of it. It is sort of summary of the whole topic of antonymy. It summarizes all the 4 types, and it does so through this activity. If you are able to do this activity successfully with all the answers correct, then you are good to go. You can move forward. If you are not able to do all of these correctly, you can you can go back and look at the concepts again. So for this particular activity you have 1 minute. So try to do this. 1 to 2 minutes you have for this. Now dear students, hopefully you should be done. We will now discuss the answers. If any of your answer is wrong, it means you need to clear the concept, so you can go back to the slides. So cat and dog, these are multiple incompatibility to each other, because obviously cat can be opposite to all other animals. All other animals will make one semantic field or one semantic class or one semantic system, as the term was used in the topic of multiple incompatibles. Now easy and difficult, these are gradable because a test can be very easy or somewhat easy, or it can be very difficult or somewhat difficult. So you can actually draw it on a gradable scale. So easy and difficult are gradable. Then good and bad. Good and bad are again gradable because somebody can be extremely good or somewhat good, so you can also draw good or bad on a gradable scale. Then these better than and worse than, this can come into two categories. It can either come into converses or it can also come into the category of gradable. Then this fifth one, deciduous versus evergreen. Deciduous means shedding of plants or shrubs, and evergreen, so these are binary antonyms. Then we have this pass or fail. Pass or fail, as you know, this is also binary antonym. Now this one, urban versus rural, this can be either binary or this can be gradable as well, because there is some debate between people there is some debate on it. Some people say that there are some other categories between urban and rural. If you also think that there are some other categories between urban and rural, these are not the only two options, then you can also mark gradable. But it cannot be multiple incompatible or it cannot be converses. Now dear students, we will move on. We will move on to the second concept of our today's lecture, that is homonymy. Now a case of homonymy is one of an ambiguous word whose different senses are far apart from each other and not obviously related to each other in any way with respect to a native speaker's intuition. So you will see that there will be multiple senses of a word, and all those senses, if they are unrelated, if they are not related to each other, if a native speaker cannot intuitively think that okay, how these two senses are related, then it can be called homonymy. These are clearly and obviously will be the matters of accident or coincidence, and there is no obvious conceptual connection between the two meanings of either word. So there is actually no connection. You will find that two senses of one word will be entirely different. Let's take an example. Now for example, mug. Mug, for example, it can be a drinking vessel or it can be a gullible person as well. So these two are clearly different senses. None of these actually relate to each other. So neither of these relates to each other. So these two are extremely quite different senses from each other. Now bank, financial institution versus the side of a river or the side of a stream. So now you see these two banks are also completely different. So when the senses of the two senses of a word, the two or more senses of a word are completely different, entirely different from each other, then we say these are the cases of homonymy. They have the homonymic relationship to each other, the unrelated senses. Now here I have given a screenshot from WordNet. I had written the word head over here, and you can see that there are so many different senses of head. Some of these senses will be related to each other and some will be unrelated to each other. Those unrelated senses would be called homonymic senses, or these will be called that these are homonymically related to each other. Now I have written here few examples from that same previous slide. I have written them so that you can clearly see them. So look at all these senses and try to see which of these are homonymically related to each other. You can see that the first two senses, look at the first two senses, head or caput, the upper part of the human body or the front part of the body in animals contains, so your head actually, he stuck his head out the window. So now this sense, and look at this second sense, a single domestic animal, 200 head of cattle. So now you see a single domestic animal plus these two senses are entirely different to each other. Also look at this sense number 10, the tip of an abscess where the pus accumulates. So now you see that these three senses are, we can say these are homonyms of each other or homonymically related to each other. So the senses which are unrelated, entirely different from each other, but they will be senses of one same word. Now bank. In bank you can also try to find out that there are few senses which are homonymically related. We had already discussed it. We had said that bank of a river versus financial institution, these two are different senses. So you can see sense 1 says depository, financial institution, like bank, banking company, like you say we have Habib Bank, we have National Bank, Allied Bank, different kinds of banks or different companies. So, and the other bank, look at it, sloping land, especially the slope beside a body of water. So this is the bank of the river. He sat on the bank of the river and watched the currents. So you can see that there are different senses which are which may be unrelated. Now look at sense number 1 and 3. These are related to some extent, that it is also having the sense of look at sense number 4 and sense number 1. These are related to some to each other. So now what do we call these related senses? We will see it in the coming slides. At the moment we were talking about the unrelated senses, and the unrelated senses are homonyms. Now the related senses are called polysemy. Now a case of polysemy is one where a word has several very closely related senses. A native speaker of the language has clear intuitions that the different senses are related to each other in some way. So as a competent speaker of the language or as a native speaker of the language, you will have clear intuitions that okay, this head, so for example head of the body is at your top. So we can also say that head of the institution is somebody who is at the top, who is actually running the institute, or head of a team, or head of a military. So the something which is actually related in the meaning. So a native speaker of the language will be able to easily guess it and will have an idea what may be the related senses of this word. But these related senses will obviously be used in different contexts. You cannot use the word head of your body in the context where you have to use head of the institute. So the context is actually different, but these are still related. You can say they are the extensions in meaning. Okay. Now look at one example of polysemy here. Example, mouth. So mouth of a river versus mouth of an animal. Now what do you think? What do these two senses have in common? Try to think. As we said that polysemy will have senses which are actually related. Try to think what do these have in common. So these two senses, this mouth of a river versus mouth of an animal, these two have the concept of an opening from the interior of something solid mass to the outside, and of a place of issue at the end of some long narrow channel. So these two are actually describing, these are sort of that something which is actually at the edge of something. It's like the mouth. So you better understand the concept of mouth. It is like an opening from the interior of something to the outside. Now these are the cases of polysemy. Now, polysemy in nouns is quite common in human languages. So, mostly there will be cases of nouns, but no doubt there are other cases as well, but mostly it is common in nouns. We will see some examples of other part of speech categories as well. Now, it's not just restricted to one part of speech, but as we said that it is common in nouns. Now look at it. Can you determine how these various senses are related to each other? Look at these. So how these are related to each other. So for example, run a race, run for office. How run a race is similar to run for office, or how is it similar to this road runs from east to west, or how is it similar to a run in a stocking or run a computer program. Try to determine how these senses are related to each other. You have 1 minute for thinking about it. I hope you would have done. Now I am moving on. Now look at these examples. The following are polysemous words. For each one, say how these senses are related and what they have in common. Now see, the word is chimney, and these two senses are given, and we have to say how these senses are related, and it is mentioned over here how these two senses are related. Look at the concept. The two senses, the first one says the pipe or funnel like structure on a building for a smoke to escape through. So that's the very common concept of chimney that we all are aware of. The second concept or sense of chimney is narrow vertical space between rocks up which a climber can wriggle by pressing against the sides. So both the senses contain the concept of a narrow vertical shaft in some solid material. So shaft means a long rod or pole. So both of these senses contain the concept of a narrow vertical shaft in some solid material. Look at this. So this is the chimney in rocks, and this is the chimney that you are generally familiar with. So both of these have this concept of long and narrow shaft. Okay, now we will move on. So here is some task for you. The following are all polysemous words. For each one, say how these senses are related, that is to say what they have in common. So for example, the first one is guard, person who guards, sentinel versus solid protective shield around machinery. So you have to see this one, person who guards versus solid protective shield. So you have to say what is common in these two senses. So the common thing, as we had discussed here in the previous slide, we had written it like this, that what is common? The common is that they concept a narrow vertical shaft in some solid material. So for this guard, we can write that it protects, it gives protection against some danger or something. So Similarly, you have to do these 3 other words. So for doing these 3 other words, you have 2 to 3 minutes. Dear students, the time is almost up and I am going to move further. We are moving towards the end of our lecture, but here are some activities left. So this activity says that you have to decide whether the following words are examples of homonymy or polysemy. Now, as you have seen that homonymy and polysemy are related concepts. Homonymy means the senses of a word which are related. Homonymy means the senses of a word which are unrelated. And polysemy means the senses of a word which are related by extension. Now look at these example words and their senses. 2 senses of each word have been given. You have to decide whether these are homonymically related or these are polysemically related to each other. You again have some 30 to 40 seconds to do this. So I expect that you must have done, if not all, at least some of these. Now let's discuss bark of a dog versus bark of a tree. Do you think these are related? No, obviously not. These are different. So these are homonymically related. Fork in a road versus instrument for eating. These two are related in meaning. These are extensions in meaning. You can just search the image of fork in a road that also looks like the fork that we have for eating it. Then it is polysemically related. Then tail of a coat versus tail of an animal. You see that both have tail in the same manner. Steer to guide versus steer as a young bull. Both of these are different, so these are homonymically related. Then lip of a jug versus lip of a person, both of these are related and they are polysemically related, because you can see lip of a jug is also at the brim, or it's actually same as the lip of a person, the extension of that meaning. Then punch, blow with the fist versus kind of fruity alcoholic drink, so these are clearly unrelated. So homonymy. Now girls, now dear students, we will move on. Here is another practice. For each of the following words, give two full sentences which bring out distinct senses of the word. So you can use dictionary for this purpose. You can either use dictionary or you can use WordNet, which is a type of thesaurus. So you can use any of these two resources, and then you have to write at least two senses of each of these words: rock, hard and file. One example has been done for you where two senses are given. Look at this. Please keep off the grass, and the informer grasped on his partners in crime. So you can see both of these are different senses. Now you have to make some similar sentences where you can distinguish between two different senses. See, you have to write two distinct senses, means you will be working on the homonyms. You will not be working on the polysemy. So work on the homonyms and make at least two sentences for each of the word with giving distinct senses. So dear students, that's almost the last activity. You can do it, and you can also once again review whatever we have read. So I am ending up this lecture with a review. So here is this reference book from which I have taken data on antonymy, homonymy and polysemy. You can go to this book and see if you do not understand anything. So we saw that there are four types of antonymy, and then we also saw homonymy and polysemy, and we saw that these two are senses of the same words. In homonymy we just have unrelated senses, and in polysemy we have related senses which are related by extension. So thank you very much. Wish you best of luck with the practice. If you have any questions or any confusions, you can ask your course instructors. Thank you very much.